The evangelical advisor to President Trump claiming God has given him the authority to take out North Korean dictator Kim Jong Un. Pastor Jeffress, citing the Bible's book of Romans 13, which says in part, "For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer." But not every religious leader agrees with that interpretation. Here for a discussion, that pastor, Robert Jeffress, and Fox News religious contributor, Father Jonathan Morris, joins us here in New York. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. And good morning to you, Pastor Jeffress, as well.
All right, Pastor Jeffress, you certainly gave the Internet something to talk about and melt down over yesterday. Explain why you say that God has given President Trump the authority to attack North Korea.
There is a great deal of confusion among Christians when it comes to this idea of using force to topple evil. And I wanted to clarify that I believe the Bible, especially Romans 13, does give President Trump moral authority to use whatever force necessary, including assassination or even war, to topple an evil dictator like Kim Jong Un. And I believe the Bible is very clear about that. And while President Trump prefers a diplomatic solution to this problem, he's been talking about diplomacy for 19 years with North Korea. He's also willing to do whatever it takes to keep America safe. And one thing I know about President Trump after being around him for the last 2 years is this. Unlike his predecessor, when President Donald Trump draws a red line, he's not going to erase it, move away from it, or back down from it.
Okay.
And we ought to thank God every day we have a courageous leader like President Trump in the White House.
Okay, Pastor Jeffress, you cited Romans 13, but when you look at Romans 12, as you know, it is do not repay evil for evil. And so some would say that flies in the face of the argument you just made.
Well, look, Steve, Paul wasn't schizophrenic. He knew what he was writing. In Romans 12, he was talking about our interpersonal relationships. Okay. We are to forgive. We are to turn the other cheek. Romans 13, the next chapter, deals with government, and the Bible never commands government to turn the other cheek or to forgive.
All right, Father Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, I think anytime you take, first of all, I should say that I agree with so many things that Pastor Jeffress says on other issues. For sure, we agree on many things. But as soon as you take one particular biblical passage and you use that as a justification for a very particular and complex political policy, and especially a military policy, I think you're making a big mistake. When Solomon asked God for wisdom, it's because political leaders and kings need wisdom, and things aren't so simple. And what President Trump needs is real wisdom and advice, and not a suggestion that he is justified in doing whatever he wants just because he has been given civil authority. And it's very, very dangerous, in my opinion, to tell him or to tell any political leader, because you have the authority, doesn't somehow means that you don't have the obligation to be very wise and to be very prudent in your decisions. War is always a total failure of the human family. It doesn't mean that sometimes violence is not necessary to stop evil.
Okay.
But as soon as you say you're justified in doing whatever you want, I think we've made a big mistake.
All right, Pastor, I think you've got a counterpoint.
Well, I do think that President Trump is seeking God's wisdom on this. I have found him in the last 2 years to be a very measured leader. And I have great respect for my friend, Father Jonathan. But I have to say this. I am glad that Americans did not listen to Christian pacifists during the Second World War when Adolf Hitler was marching toward world domination, or today would all be speaking German and saying Heil Hitler. I mean, the fact is, war is never preferable. It's never the first preference. But sometimes you have to stand up and confront evil to defeat evil.
I agree with you completely, Pastor Jeffress. I agree with you on that. But what you said, I think, went a little bit further. You said because he has the moral authority to make political decisions, therefore he is justified in taking out the leader of North Korea. That's a very particular circumstance. It's a very particular political situation.
American lives, yes, he does.
Right, but we can't say that he is justified immediately. He needs wisdom and prudence to know when it's necessary, and not to. I think we need to be a little bit more nuanced and helping him make those decisions.
Well, there certainly is a lot of soul searching going on.
I think he is seeking that.
Okay, I don't doubt that he is.
All right, and keep in mind it was George W. Bush himself when he was president, said many times that he looked to God for guidance whenever he sent American troops into harm's way. All right. Great chat this morning. Pastor, Father, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Pastor.